I've got a big problem on my hands. The boss is currently down for the count. I had a catastrophic malfunction happen while running a custom order, but I still have stock products that I need to cut for my website, and this is the laser that I use to cut all of my products. So what I'm going to do instead is see if I can use my xTool P2 here to fill in the blanks for a couple days and keep me afloat while I wait for replacement parts for my busted boss laser here. Let's see how it goes. If you're new here, thanks for stopping by. My name is Justin and I've been running my own laser-based business for the past 10 years or so. I started out in a makerspace, then I moved into my own 1,000 square foot workshop and I stayed there for a couple years. Now I'm operating out of my garage. So let me give you a little rundown of what happened here and what I'm going to do in hopes to work around this until I can get this thing fixed. It was a dark and stormy night. No, basically I was working on a custom order. I had an order for engraving several parts of, I don't know what you would call the full apparatus, but I'll put a picture up on the screen here. So all those wood 2x4 frames, I was engraving logos on them. And then I was also engraving the logos on the steel targets. So I had to use my CO2 laser here to engrave the wood parts and my fiber laser to engrave the steel parts. Everything was going great. I started off with the fiber laser stuff because that one I was most worried about. 2x4s aren't that expensive to replace if you mess up, but steel targets are. But they came out great. They looked better than I thought they were gonna look. So I moved on to engraving the wood, and that was going fine too. I dialed in my settings pretty fast. I didn't have to waste too much time practicing, you know, because anytime you spend testing is just money going out the door. And I finished everything up. I was super happy. And then it was time to set my acrylic back up. So the products that I normally sell in my business, I operate what would be called a niche product laser business, where I have a very specific lane. I design like leather notebooks and card holders and wallets and stuff like this. And then what I do is I take those patterns, I laser cut them out of acrylic. You can see some of the acrylic sitting behind me here. And then I sell those to people all over the world on my website. I sell them on Etsy. And I've been doing this for the past 10 years, as I mentioned. So what I was doing was setting, because the 2x4s are much larger than the acrylic, I had to refocus down to my acrylic. And normally I manual focus everything. I don't ever use the autofocus because the autofocus on this laser operates by making contact with your material. So you will hit the autofocus button, the laser will drop all the way down, it'll bounce off of your material, hitting the nozzle, and then it'll bounce back up to the appropriate focal distance. I've never used that because I never trusted it. I'm like, well, what would happen if the autofocus malfunctioned and it just kept going? So I've always just used the little manual focus pieces here to put my laser in focus. Since I've owned this, I've never used autofocus. I decided I was feeling good and I was just gonna hit the autofocus button for the first time, basically since I've owned this laser. And you can guess what exactly happened, right? I hit the button, I hit the autofocus button, I walked away back to my computer, and I heard the worst sound you could possibly hear. And that is the autofocus not stopping and continuing to drive the material into the bed. I run back over, smash on the emergency stop button, but the damage was already done. I managed to get the acrylic out of the bottom here, and I was praying that my laser head wasn't bent, and it wasn't. However, inside of my laser head here, I got a hairline fracture in my lens. So the lens, done. Even worse than that, I somehow torqued the bed so badly that it basically busted a pulley off of the belt tensioner system. I'll show you that on the video there. So as I was unscrewing that to re-level the bed here, this little spring that you see there just bounced. It was like so pressurized, it just bounced somewhere in my workshop and I couldn't find it. It was on the ground somewhere and I was looking everywhere. I couldn't find it. So now I'm at the scenario where I have a busted lens and a busted belt pulley and I don't have the spring anymore. Kind of screwed. Well, after what felt like an eternity of searching for that spring and repositioning the belt tensioner here, I managed to get all of this back together here, which means I could level my bed. You can see here, so that means all four corners of my bed are completely level, which keeps the material in focus across the entire space, but my lens is still wrecked. So I ordered my replacement lens on a Friday. I'm not going to be getting it till at least Monday, but I might not have that much time. My wife is very pregnant. We're at the end game now. It could be next week. It could be this weekend. It could be an hour from now. So I want to make sure that I have a little stockpile of my best sellers cut and ready for shipping in case I have to make that move. I don't want to be spending time at the laser when I need to take care of my wife and the baby or be at the hospital. And I'd rather just have them here. I could pack them up, get them ready for shipping, and there won't be too much of a disruption to my day-to-day operations here. The only other laser I have in the shop that can do that type of work is my xTool P2. I'm cutting clear acrylic, and you need a CO2 laser to cut clear acrylic, and the xTool P2 is a CO2 laser. I do use my P2 a lot, but mainly for prototyping. So I'll come up with a design, and then I will actually laser cut the leather and put it together, make sure it looks good, make sure everything's working. Here's a little card holder here with an engraving on it. And I love it for that purpose, but I've never tried using it for batch production work. So let's give it a shot. The first thing I need to do is get the P2 set up for cutting acrylic. Right now I have the honeycomb panel in because I was cutting leather, but when cutting acrylic, you want to use the slats. I'm also going to be using the AP2 air purifier to cut down on these acrylic fumes since I'm shooting it out into my front yard. All right, so let me show you exactly what we're going to be cutting today. In conjunction with cutting custom patterns for my customers, I do have a reasonably large stock catalog of products that I've designed. And while I have a lot of them, there are 3 products that are by far my best sellers. I sell them all day, every day. First one being a drink koozie pattern. So a customer would trace this onto leather, cut it out, stitch it up, and they'll have a little leather koozie for a can of beer or a can of soda, whatever they want to do. And this one retails for $26. The next product is my corner cards. So this little template here is used to freehand trace 4 different quarter radiuses if you're working on leather. So you have a 90-degree angle, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and a 3/4 inch here. And this retails for $6. And my final one, this is by far my best seller. This is called my wrap wallet pattern here. And what this pattern does is it creates this template, creates this wallet here. So it's a little wrap wallet with a couple different spots to put cards and cash and all that good stuff. And this one retails for $28. And you might be wondering, how do I charge prices like that for what is essentially a piece of plastic? There are many different reasons, but the main reason is I am not romantic about my patterns. A lot of pattern makers, they'll design stuff like this, they sell stuff like this, but they're very protective and they make them for personal use only. I don't do that. I encourage commercial use of my patterns. So what that means is someone can buy my pattern, they can create this wallet, and then they can sell these wallets under their brand to their customers. I don't care at all. So in this case, what happens is, yes, you might be spending $20 to $28 for a wallet pattern that I designed, but as soon as you sell 1 or 2 of them, you completely recoup the cost of buying this pattern, and every wallet that you sell after that, you can completely deduct the cost of this pattern from, because you've already made that money back. All right, first things first, let's load up a piece of acrylic because we're going to be using xTool's camera system to place all of our templates on the sheet. I'm not the biggest fan of using cameras like this because I know the image is a little bit skewed, but in this case, beggars can't be choosers. For the first run here, I'm loading it up with my wrap wallet templates and some corner cards to fill in the little gaps. I know there's some wasted space here, but right now I don't care. I just want to get these cut. Instead of figuring out my own settings, I'm just going to go with what xTool recommends. So I load up the xTool material library. I choose 3mm clear acrylic, and I take the engraving and cutting settings from that material library and apply it to my job here. Looking at the job preview, this one's saying it's going to take 34 minutes and 7 seconds to run. Let's let it rip. All right, just got done running the first sheet. I'm really hoping these come out acceptable, so let's check them out. Actually, let me turn off this machine so you can hear me. Okay, so here is our sheet. What I'm hoping first, that everything cut through. I could see some parts already fell through, so I'm pretty confident that all of the little holes and whatnot cut through completely, but you never know until we pick up the sheet. Also, that the connecting points on the acrylic are nice and smooth. I don't want any jagged edges. And also, as an added bonus, there's not a whole lot of backsplash on the underside of the masking paper here. So let's take a look. All right, so we had nice clean cuts through. That is number one, a win. Okay, now let me check. Yeah, all the little holes, they look nice and perfect and round. I have no seams at all on the top edge. Sometimes I get that on my boss, actually. I'll have a little notch, which I don't like on my patterns, because when you're using patterns, you want a nice, precise marking. And then on the back, we have absolutely no flames on the back. This is beautiful. So P2, so far so good. Let me wipe off the engraving here. See that? We have a nice frosty marking on the surface of our acrylic. Excellent. So what I'm going to do now is load the second design in, the second sheet, and we'll cut that. Here's a look at one of my finished drink koozies that I just cut. Same as the other ones, just perfect, perfect. There's no flashback on the back paper here, which I do get a lot of on my boss. Holes look good, the edges look good. I could not be happier with the way that these patterns came out on my P2. Let's finish up the video with a little head-to-head comparison experience of cutting my products on the Boss Laser versus the xTool P2. Starting with the job speed. So that was actually very comparable. I normally run my cutting at 15 millimeters per second and 75 to 80% power on the Boss. And on the P2, I used whatever was stock in the material library. So that was 13 millimeters per second and 80% power. So a 2 millimeter difference, not that big of a deal. I'm sure I could boost that up to 15 millimeters per second to match the speed that I run my Boss at. As far as engraving goes, I think I run it a little bit faster on my Boss, but that's just because I've dialed it in and I've been doing it for years on my Boss. I just went with the stock settings in the xTool material library when I was running on my P2, and it worked out fine. It wasn't that much slower. I don't even know if it actually was slower, so I'll have to double check the exact speed that I use. The biggest difference is the most obvious difference, and that's the bed size. So my Boss has a much larger bed size than my P2 does. When I cut on my Boss, I buy giant packs of these pieces of acrylic here that are cut specific to the size of my bed, and I can just run many more templates all at once because the bed size is larger. The P2's bed size is a little bit smaller, so I had to use those cut-off sheets. But again, all things compared, not that big of a deal. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention, AP2, great job at filtering the smells. So normally when I'm running on my Boss, I have it connected to a filter box compact, which does all of my air purification. And there's no way I'm taking apart this system for just a couple days. So I used the xTool air purifier, which is the AP2, connected it to my P2, and I used that to cut down on the exhaust fumes before I exhausted outside. And that way my neighbors aren't smelling disgusting cast acrylic fumes. And I walked outside the garage a couple times, and I didn't notice anything at all. I even walked right next to the exhaust hose and I didn't smell anything at all. So for anyone who needs to have a little bit of a stealthier operation like I have here, highly recommend getting an air purifier. And if you're gonna be picking up a P2 or an S1 or an F1 Ultra or anything from xTool, highly recommend getting the AP2 as well. And while we're on the topic, if you're interested in picking up an xTool P2, or what I would suggest doing, picking up the xTool P2S, which is the updated model from what I have here, I would greatly appreciate if you could use the link in the video description below. It doesn't cost you anything, but xTool will kick back a couple bucks to me, which helps me pay for making all of these videos while I'm running the business here. In any case, thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys soon. If you don't see me for a couple weeks, it's probably because baby number 2 is here, but I will get back to regular scheduled programming. But for now, I have some more plastic to cut.